My name is Susan Dadian, and I am the Director of Artistic Planning here at Chamber Music America. I've been with the organization since 2002, previously a classical chamber music and jazz presenter. And I've been here with our grant programs, conference, and events. And I know many of you here on the chat on this Zoom. So I'm just glad to see everybody. And when we were talking about who would be a good person to speak to the topic of, jazz industry and helping us welcome jazz members, who did I think of immediately? Not even just a tip of my tongue, it was Lydia Liebman. And so, anyway, we're just so pleased to have Lydia here with us. And she has presented for us before. Her father has also presented for us in the past, whom we all adore, David Liebman. And but anyway, so I just want to start by saying that Lydia is a member of CMA, and we're so happy to have a member speak with our membership. One thing I want to share about Lydia is that she floods my inbox, and and it's a good flood. And so just this morning, I received one of her most uplifting. Her uplifting style is just fantastic. Hello, I hope you're doing well. And then she talks about how Sasha Berliner's artistry prompts us to reconsider the divide between tradition and modernity, urging us to appreciate jazz for what it truly is, rather than confining it to rigid categories. That is Lydia's style, and I look forward to receiving my Lydia. Oh, I'm making you blush, Lydia.
I'm hiding, but thank you. Thank you so much. But oh my goodness.
No, please. It's really great to have you with us today, and I'm sorry if I made you
No, it's okay.
whatever feel embarrassed. But anyway, so uh, we're asking people just in the chat just share a little bit, and then we want Lydia to just speak a little bit about herself. We have her bio, but then how has the industry changed over the time that you have been in the industry, and maybe speak to some of the challenges and opportunities. Opportunities. This is something glass half full that you can share with us, that that people are doing, and that we can learn from each other, rather than just sort of saying, oh, this is always dark and dreary. We have a lot that we can learn from you and from each other. So okay, that's it from me, and take it away. And thank you, Lydia.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thanks so much. Really happy to be here. Yeah, thanks for like reading that opening blurb. Always hard to hear your own writing being like spoken. So excuse my hiding. It's just like it's so funny to hear it, but I'm glad that it affects you positively, and that's the point. We want to have a good flood and not a bad one of the inbox. So anyway, it's so nice to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation, Susan and Julia. As mentioned, I am a member of CMA, and prior to me becoming a member officially, which was I think like the end of last year, the beginning of this year, I've been involved in CMA in general. I have done like some panels for CMA before, and I've had a lot of clients that I see many of you on the call, which is so nice to see so many familiar faces. A lot of my clients are CMA grantees or members of CMA themselves. So, there's been a lot of overlap over the years. So it's just really nice to be here. So I guess I'll just kind of go launch into a little bit about myself and about what I do, and about kind of what I guess the background of sort of like how I've gotten to this place where I'm at now, which is doing PR and publicity and promotion exclusively for jazz artists and jazz albums and festivals and many things of that nature. And, I hope to, in this kind of opening spiel, address, I guess, or mention maybe some of the issues that, or some of the changes that I've seen over the last 14 or so years that I've been doing this. And obviously this is a Q&A. So definitely any questions you have about literally anything, feel free to hit me with them. I'm very transparent and I just think that knowledge is, should be shared. I am also like a professor of music business in addition to this. So while I am like focused on PR as my profession and trade, I do a lot of other stuff outside of that, and I'm kind of involved in a lot of different facets of the industry in general. So if there are questions that are maybe like not directly related to PR, but sort of, feel free to hit me with those too, because I might be able to help answer those as well. So yeah, so should I just go get right into it, I guess, right? Okay. I started my company called Lydia Liebman Promotions in 2011. I was a student at Emerson College and also Berklee College of Music. I did this joint program with the two. So while I was technically a student at Emerson, I was really involved in Berklee quite a bit. Made friends with a lot of musicians and artists there, and they, had shows that they were doing and recordings that they were putting together and things like that. That no one really had a plan on how to promote it. I didn't either, but I sort of picked up how to do these things. I learned from some great mentors, some great publicity mentors that were very helpful to me. I kind of learned by doing, and my first client was the Berklee Global Jazz Institute with Danilo Perez, and that was like 2012, I would say, that we started working with them. So ever since then, it's just kind of been a steady, kind of a steady thing of promoting artists and working on their respective projects to get them covered by the press. Some of the clients that I work with to this day are Lakeisha Benjamin, Brandy Younger, Gonzalo Rubicalba, Jeff Coffin, Catherine Russell, Spanish Harlem Orchestra, a really wide range of all kind of spectrums of jazz. But I'm very, you know, very much in like the jazz lane. I don't really take much outside of that. I really am, quite a specialist, and therefore, the projects that I'm working are really in that realm. And I do work almost 100 albums a year, which is like absolutely crazy, and I recognize that. And that's actually about maybe 20% of what actually comes across my desk looking for representation. So, it just kind of speaks to like how much content is out there and how many artists are out here trying to, put their work out. So I think that, that kind of easily lends itself to one of the, the biggest issues that I have seen, and some of the biggest changes that I've seen, which is the ability to put music out, much faster and much more direct. The art of self-releasing is something that has really been perfected especially over the last decade or so, where you don't necessarily need a label, you don't need all those things to put an album out, which means that there's a gigantic influx of works that want to get out there and be heard. So then that kind of leads to us like, well, if all the work is great, how do we make those decisions on what should actually be represented and what are those boxes that we're looking to check? So I'm sure that, I'm sure those questions will come up. But as we go about what specifically, like, as a publicist, like what I'm looking for to represent a project and sort of like what I'm seeing work out in the market. But I will say that that is something that changes all the time. And I think that the way that I've been able to stay, in this business for so long and or stay so active is by being very, very aware of like what is going on and what are the changes that are happening constantly, and being super, super aware of just the music business at large, like how that is affecting everybody in all genres, from the mainstream, down to what we're doing, and to just be very, very like conscious of that, and to constantly sort of be adapting as much as we can to those things. So I'm kind of jumping around a lot because it's like a long intro, but basically, the bottom line is I've been doing this for 14 years, have a lot of wonderful clients that I'm very proud of. And the way that I work is really on a project by project basis. There are artists that I work with for a long term. That what kind of whatever they're releasing, I'm working per se. There are folks like Catherine Russell that are kind of in that camp. The late Ralph Peterson was in that camp. Jeff Coffin, Spanish Harlem Orchestra, like these, Gonzalo Rubalcaba, like these are artists that are constantly releasing music pretty much every year, a project, if not two. So we're working with them on a steady basis. But really, I am focused on the project itself. I'm working on an album. My job is to really get that album covered. I am not doing so much of tour press these days. It's because the market is very hard and very, very difficult to do that. Tour press is really kind of like a separate animal. It's reliant on local and regional media markets, which are going through a lot of issues. They have been forever, but they really are going through it now due to consolidation and just general vibes of what's happening in the world. So it's quite a challenge to do that type of promotion. So, I'm really more focused on the whole work at large. We're working with media to get reviews. We're working with media to get interviews. We're working to get, listings. I mean, literally anything that can get eyes on the project while understanding that the media market in general is shrinking. The press, jazz press, very, shrinking all the time. It's very, very difficult to be pitching multiple projects at the same time when we only have like three, like not even like three-ish major jazz publications in the United States. And even that is a stretch to say that there's three. I would say it's kind of like one and then like and a half and maybe another half right now. So it's a very challenging environment. So for me, what I'm always trying to do with my projects is to see like, yeah, there you go. Sullivan is my artist. I was really pleased to get him on the cover of Downbeat. That was awesome. Doesn't happen every day. So thank you, Susan. I'm glad you have that on hand. Happy about that. But yeah, so we're dealing with these publications, but we're also trying to like look at projects and see, okay, how can I get this outside of our bubble? What threads can I pull on to kind of get this covered by a different type of outlet that's maybe not downbeat, while understanding that this music is not like for everybody. It is a small percentage of the market, and understanding that like the general public is probably not going to be drawn to this music in the way that, we are on this call because we're a part of the community. So it comes down to sort of like distilling the ideas of particular projects and being like, okay, like what threads can I pull here to make it palpable for like someone who maybe isn't super into jazz to be interested in this. So there's a lot of different approaches that I have, but that's really like a big guiding principle for me. And in the end, I just want people to, to hear these works. I really want the public and I want the media to have an open ear. And it's very important to me to like preserve this music in the public space. And anything that kind of opens the door, even just a teeny little bit, to me is a success. One of the greatest things that, that happened with me last year was we got Lakeisha Benjamin on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert for a whole week. Took a year to make that happen, but that happening was a huge deal for us because she's not represented by a major label. She it doesn't have like a massive like corporate machine behind her. Her publicist me is like independent. So for us to be able to do something like that is a really big deal, and it signals maybe just like a slight opening of the door for jazz artists to sort of slide in there, and that is kind of like my goal. Something like that helps everyone, and it helps us all sort of get in there a little bit better. So yeah, that's kind of the kind of what I'm doing. So okay, that was so long. I'm so sorry. I'm like rambling like literally insane. Please someone ask a question so that I can refocus. But yes, that's kind of the overview of things. Yes. Any questions to kind of get things started? Okay. How do you personally make the decision to take on a client project from the hundreds of pitches you receive? Okay. The day is always one of the okay. So, great question, Josh. Okay, so for me, personally for me, what is it that's going to get me to get it to the next level once I receive that email? So, first of all, a lot of it comes down to scheduling, first and foremost, which I think is something that everyone should definitely understand is that it takes a lot of time for us to get stuff on our schedule. And I say us as like publicists in general. The good ones are going to be booked up. I book out about 8 months minimum in advance. Now, that does not mean that there isn't some windows before then that opens up. They do sometimes because I'm working with a lot of independent artists and smaller labels. There's definitely, there's always stuff that kind of changes where where people like they have to shift things and then suddenly it's like, oop, I have an opening, in 3 months, and I will usually like circle back with an artist to let them know that, if somebody was like on the waiting list for that time. But generally speaking, we're booking out really far. So that's the first thing. It's like, when's the release date? When are you looking to put this out? And if it's within the next 6 months, chances are I'm probably not going to be able to take it unless you are like a repeat client who I already kind of have a rapport with and already kind of know the deal. I just had this happen actually with Kurt Rosenwinkel. Like, I've worked with Kurt on a couple projects, and his team approached me a couple weeks ago about a release in May, and in a normal world that absolutely would not be a possibility. But I did have something move, and because I've worked with him before, it's an easy thing that we can slide in. So I was like, sure, we can do this. It's very unusual though for that to happen. So the first thing is the timing. If the timing aligns, then it's like, okay, let me actually check this out and see what we're dealing with. The music is first, obviously. The music has to hit a certain professional level just from an objective standpoint. Not that when I first listen, it's not me like diving in to see if I like it or love it or not. It's more about kind of like, well, is everything up to snuff, especially if it's a self-release? Like, are we, is it high quality? How does everybody sound? Like, is it good? Great. Passes that, then it goes on to like, do I like the music? I don't have to love it. It's impossible to love everything. And anybody who says that they love everything they work, like, it's just, you can't. I mean, you're working 100 albums a year, you can't love it all. You have to at least like it though. I have to at least feel a connection to it. It has to kind of like, like move me in some way. Or if it doesn't, there has to be something else that is speaking to me. And sometimes that's the story, where like the story is so strong, and the story is up there with the music for me as needing to be very important, because that's really what's selling the whole story. I mean, that's what's selling the whole pitch. But for me, it's like, there has to be something that I am personally like latching on to here that is, that I like, that I'm going to feel confident speaking on your behalf, and convincing folks that this is worth listening to and giving time to. And that can only come, in my opinion, from a genuine place of actually genuinely liking it. So yeah, it's got to kind of like check that box for me. My personal tastes, are very varied. I definitely listen to a ton of music outside of jazz. I actually primarily listen to music outside of jazz when I'm kind of just like, living my life. So there are things that'll come across my desk that I like love sonically and just adore and be like, oh, this is so in my sweet spot. But sometimes I'll also, make that call like, but am I the best publicist for this? And that especially comes with projects that have a mainstream or a crossover appeal, where it's like, well, this is kind of on the cusp. So like it potentially has like runway for a wider audience. But for me, I know my specialty and I know what I'm good at. And I know that there are only some projects where things are perfectly aligned, where I can feel confident and comfortable going outside of that bubble and really swinging. For instance, I did a project with Glenn Close and Ted Nash a couple years ago. That is, of course, like there's no question that I can go to CNN with that project, which we did get CNN for it and the Associated Press. Like I can go to them because I have Glenn Close, but if I have the same project with, not Glenn Close, there's no way that I can go to CNN with something like that, so it's all about like context and understanding like what we're dealing with. And I am genuinely asking myself with every project that comes across my desk, am I the best person for it? So if I feel like I can be, and then I can bring something good to them, and I like the music and the story is compelling, the story doesn't always have to be something crazy. I have quite a range of like content heavy stories. For example, on this very call, Andromeda Ture, if she's still on this call, like she has an amazing project that is a climate change complete, like suite of all of these, 4 different locales that are tied to like the sonic and all this stuff. And like a project like that, there's such a story there. It's like, okay, this is great. Like obviously, like this is a shoe-in for me. I'm taking it. Where sometimes the story is just, well, like Sullivan, we played at the Vanguard, the vibes were great, and we decided to go in the studio and record, and that's the story. So it doesn't always have to be like a life-changing, major thing. Sometimes it's literally like, yeah, we sounded great together and we want to document it. And there's the story. And that is the story. So sometimes I have folks that'll try to kind of like shoehorn a narrative into their work, and you can always tell. And it's usually not necessary to do that, because sometimes you guys just getting together in the studio is enough. But anyway, the story has to speak to me. And then we get into like the other stuff, the technical stuff, which is actually where a lot of things, this is where a lot of things kind of like don't move forward. And that's like, okay, what is the rest of your story? Like, what other team do you have? Am I the only team member? Like, is there a manager? Is there a booking agent? Is there an assistant? Is there a tour? Do you have a release show? Is there a show in New York? Is there a show somewhere else? Are you doing a hometown show? Like where are you going to be performing this? Because the live element is really important. And these days, a lot of coverage, especially in New York City, is driven on the live element. I'm sure we'll get to this, but like the media climate is so messed up. Like it's so desolate that the New York Times does not have a regular jazz writer on staff right now. Like they just don't. They have people that contribute semi-regularly, but there is not a like Nate is not there, anymore. Like, Hank is not like there, Gio's not there. Like these folks are not writing about jazz on the regular. So what is our option of getting coverage from the New York Times? Well, if you have a great story and the stars align and we can get you a profile, amazing. But really, it's going to be like a gig alert. It's going to be like, every Thursday they do what's happening in New York City. They pick two jazz events a month, and that's what they highlight. So we just got Rachel Eckroth and John Hadfield in there for a show at Rizzoli and at New Blue, which was fantastic. That's amazing. We got like a blurb, and it was like, thank goodness, this is so great. But that's kind of like what we're getting these days. Not even the playlist, which comes out every Friday, features jazz anymore. So when you're dealing with these types of conditions, you have to really like you have to consider it. Everyone always comes to me, well, I want to get covered in the New York Times. All right, well, let me give you the rundown of like what the New York Times is looking like these days, and now let's see like how we can best approach that. So that's why for me, the live element is super important. I also want to know, like what else you've got going on. Are you appearing on other people's records? Like, are you as a sideman or sidewoman like known in that way? Because that's something in jazz that's how people become cognizant of other folks, is who they're playing with. So this is a very long answer to your question, but it's I think important because I do get so many like submissions and solicitations for representation, and so much so that it's like it's impossible. It takes me forever to like get back to everybody. It's very hard, and it's hard sometimes because I want to explain why I can't take something, and it's sometimes because of these little things like there's no tour or there's nothing else happening or nothing else going on, or maybe there's no label at all. And if it's a complete self-release, I need assurance that like you are going to take care of the distribution the right way. We do not do playlists. That is a distribution thing. We're not getting you on the Spotify State of Jazz playlist. Like we're not getting you on Grown Jazz on Tidal, even though those editors are like friends of mine and a lot of them are on my list and they do end up doing stuff anyway. I'm not like pitching them. That's up to your distributor. So that means you've got to have a good distributor or a good distribution partner, because that's also like really important. So again, a really long answer to the question, but it's because there are so many different factors, and a lot of it has to do with stuff that isn't tied to the music or the artistry. It's tied to like kind of the technical stuff, checking the boxes. And then like the last thing that I will take, the last two things I mentioned, the one thing is like knowing what else is in the market. I know kind of like what other publicists are working. I know kind of like what's coming down the line from major labels, like, as far in advance as they know usually. So therefore, if I know, for example, like you're a vocalist and I know that Samara Joy is going to be releasing an album in September, I might tell you, hey, you should probably stay away from that because like we know that the room's going to get, the air is going to get sucked out of the room. Maybe let's move this to somewhere else. So that could be a reason I say no. The last reason that I say yes or no is the vibe check. This is a very, personal business. You get to know your clients really well. You get to know your artists really well. You got to kind of be in it together. If it's an artist I've never worked with before, I am definitely doing a vibe check to make sure that we are on the same page and that expectations are cool and that we're getting along okay. If I get an inkling that maybe it's a little like, expectations are out of whack or things aren't going to be cool, I just will not take it because I like my sanity. So there is that too. Sometimes just being like the coolest, chillest, nicest person can get a really, really long way. And you can have the most amazing project, but if your expectations are not aligned, I'm not gonna go there. So again, long answer to your question, but it covers a lot of bases. Those are some of the things that I'm looking for when we're looking to take a project or not. Okay.
That was pure
Awesome.
gold. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah, really detailed. I'm gonna get it more concise as I go on. More questions?
Lydia, we have a next question, which is, can you give some advice on how to use press to create performing opportunities with venues, agents, and festivals?
Yeah, I think like in the end, it's like when you, okay, so us getting press for you guys, that's great. What it actually does for you is on you and how you make it work for you. Because I mean, like, I'm so glad, of course, that like Susan has her issue of Downbeat. Of course, like we're gonna have that. The general public are they're not necessarily reading those things. So it's more about kind of like what you do with the press you get. Something that I always kind of like it's kind of interesting to me is like we'll get like a client like amazing coverage and like they don't post any of it, on socials, or they don't have it prominently on their website, or it's just hard to find. It's more about like the cosign. It's kind of like, okay, this thing with Rachel Eckroth and John Hatfield, we got from the New York Times, right? It's like I'm pretty confident that like I don't think that that listing got them a ton of new people to come to the show. Like I'm sure it didn't. But we can say from now on that it was chosen as a critics' picks for the New York Times, and that is what we will. I mean, we are going to use this. She's going to use this forever. Like we're going to use this till the end of days, because once they said it once, they've said it forever, and you can use it. So it's more about like utilizing the press that you do get and turning it into more so that it has like a longer life. The messed up thing about that particular listing for the New York Times is that that page where they do the listings refreshes every week. So you can't even get like a tear sheet of it. Like you've got to like capture it immediately when it comes out because it's gone. Like if you Google this, I don't even think you can find it anymore because it keeps refreshing. It makes it so hard for us to do our jobs. So it's up to you to like keep that press and prominently, take your screenshots, prominently feature it on your website, prominently feature it on your socials, so that when you are hitting up a festival or you are hitting up an agent and being like, hey, I'm looking for representation, the first place they're going to go is still your website. And they're still going to like, if they're of a certain generation, they'll look on socials, but they are looking at your website. So I just say, always make sure that your press is prominent. Even if it's a very small outlet that doesn't like have a huge listenership or readership, it really doesn't matter. If the quote is good, just use the quote. Nobody cares. Like they're going to encounter it more from you sharing it than if they organically encountered it in the real world. So just always kind of think about it like that. Like whatever you get, just use it until you get a better quote. And as long as it's like easy to find, you want it so that people can see it when they're like doing their due diligence and researching you, that they find it. So that's, there are many of other ways, but that's just something easy that I would advise to do.
Awesome. Our next question is from Dylan. It's a follow-up on what you mentioned. Yeah, advice for a project that is more crossover. Um, and have you helped projects get press and publicity from within the jazz world and also outside of it? Or is that kind of a thing that's spreading the band too thin?
Yeah, I get it. So, okay, so the thing with crossover projects is this. I have done projects that are kind of in a crossover world. They are hard for me. Like sometimes we get lucky and things happen, but when they happen, it is luck. Like I'm being honest with you. It is literally pure luck. PR is based on connections and relationships. Like it really is. It all comes down to the relationships you have. It's the relationships that I have are really, are in the jazz world. And then I have these other relationships at other publications when things are right. Like for instance, one of my dearest friends is like the head of voices at the Huffington Post. It's like I know that I can only pitch her stuff that is super specific to that beat. And I know that most of the stuff I do is not going to fit there. So I'm not even going to like try it because I know that there's no chance. So when it comes to crossover stuff, this is what I always tell people. It's like once you start going into like another genre or a more mainstream genre, you are now competing with everybody else. And you are now thrown into a much, 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 much wider pool with people that, first of all, have those connections in those fields already. Like the me of like the folk indie world, like there's plenty of them, it's like they already have those connections. So like the likelihood of them of like, let's say, I don't even know, like the likelihood of maybe a writer from Pitchfork who doesn't really cover jazz that much, but might maybe has in the past. And I see like, okay, like maybe they'll be open to this like singer-songwritery jazz project I have. This person's not used to getting pitched from me. So it doesn't really like seeing my name in their inbox is not going to be like, oh, let me see what Lydia's pitching me. I'm just like another person who's sending them something. Whereas like, Frank at Downbeat or, Nate or someone like that, like I would hope that after all this time, I've built up a reputation with them where they know what I'm delivering them is high quality work. And at least like they're going to give it a shot to listen because I tend to deliver things that match what they want. So that's the thing with the crossover stuff. It's like, I don't really feel like that I am personally like the best equipped person to do those things because it is really hard and you're beholden to a completely different set of different things over there too. I mean, it's a lot of pay for play. There's a lot of advertising going on between labels. There's a lot of other stuff at work in the mainstream space, and it is kind of like hard to infiltrate that. But we can when it is the right project. Lakeisha, again, great example, have gotten her into BET, have gotten her, covered by a lot of other stuff. We've got her in The Guardian, a lot of things. And her story resonated, right time, right place. Music is complicated, but not too complicated. It's an easier sell. So sometimes we can do it, but that's a jazz project. When I have projects that are really on the line, it's very tough for me. And I think that it's just kind of like you want to define who your audience is and speak to your audience. It's like, who do I want my audience to be? Is it a jazz audience or is it not? Who is it? And then figure out like who is the best person to accomplish that. Just had a call with a long-term client yesterday. She is doing an amazing project. It has a lot of themes of like motherhood and, giving birth and like parenthood and all of this. And, she asked me, do you think that we can pitch this to like parents publications and stuff? And I was literally like, I mean, sure. I mean, if you want to, but it's a waste of my time because they are not going to answer me. The actual way to do it is let's pick a journalist, let's identify a journalist who might be warm to this type of topic and introduce you to them. And then leave it up to that journalist and be like, hey, I have this great story anywhere you want to pitch it. And then they can say, you know what, let me pitch this to these outlets. Yeah, sure. I'll pitch it to like parents. I'll pitch it to this and leave it to the journalist to do that. So there are other ways to like approach it where it's not just like the publicist responsible, like the only person out there like getting the coverage. Because if you do rely on just a publicist to do that, I believe you will be disappointed if you're trying to attack two different genres at the same time. But that's just my experience. And I bet if you hired a larger firm that has many employees, and they have the bandwidth to do that, it's a little different. But for me, it's like, as someone who's kind of like running the ship here, I like to stay really focused on what I'm best at, I guess. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we have another question from Josh again. What are 3 crucial items that up and coming artists are missing from their press kit that you notice the most often?
I would say more so it's about the inverse. So like what should you prepare for your press kit? Because I don't usually by the time they come to me, most people have their shit together at this point, but sometimes they don't. I would say high res photos, big. Like high res photos, but not too high res so that they can't upload them. I would say like between like 2 MB, is usually good in vertical and landscape and portrait. So in both orientations, you don't need many, like 2 to 3 or 3 to 5. That's really important. I have literally had, coverage opportunities come purely because of the images that we've had, because we've had photos, and I've lost opportunities because we haven't had photos. So like Jazz's magazine, for example, their entire format is based off of the art. So if you don't have photos to work with, like they're not going to be able to do a feature on you. And I've lost major features because the artists like haven't had that part of it together. So definitely photos. That's a big one. Another one is having your music easy to hear without downloading. People don't really want to download big files. I know that even when a prospective client comes to me and they're like, here's my album and I have to download 2 gigs, like that's like, I'm like not trying to do that. So making your music easily accessible, whether that be SoundCloud or using Disco, which is a platform that I adore and use all the time. Google Drive is not great either because you can't always preview it. Sometimes you can't download it. So having it so that they can hear it quickly and not have to download it. So there's that. And then The third thing I would say is probably pretty obvious, but just having like a well-written bio that is up to date. That's the biggest thing. Having your bio be current. That's a huge thing. I run into this problem a lot with clients where like they'll give me a bio for the press release that is still talking about like they'll that the footnote it'll be like yes and and in 2023 he looks forward to releasing his date his third album, and it's like, well, we're in 2025 and you should definitely update that. Because like, yes, I will catch that to update it, but I'm not always there editing it, and like I'm sure you're using it elsewhere. So like those are the things. So photos, music that is easy to hear, and an up-to-date bio that is error-free and present up to the present time.
Yeah, we all see those bios.
Sure you guys see them.
Especially, it's
Yeah.
so hard, especially when you're promoting an event. It's tough. So from my work over here at CMA, I always appreciate it when people update their bios. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that's a
Thank
good
you.
thing. Love.
Um, our next question is from Aimee. Alan, I don't know if you Americanized or not, your name, but you talked about getting outside the jazz bubble. So as a CMA grantee, I'm interested in overlap between the jazz and classical worlds, which I believe to be somewhat untapped. What types of places outside of jazz press or even jazz venues do you find yourself working with? And examples are appreciated. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, jazz and classical, yeah, there is kind of like an interesting synergy there. I'm working a project, my first one in a while, which is this Kurt Rosenwinkel project. It's a Brahms project. So it's very much in that lane. And yeah, I've just started like pitching, classical outlets that I haven't pitched in a long time, just last week. Uh, Only one got back to me right away to say that they don't do reviews. I'm like, I didn't pitch that, but thank you for letting me know that. But they all read it though. The classical folks were reading it very, very fast. I was happy to see that. Anyway, yeah, I mean, outside of the jazz press, I mean, I am pretty focused in the jazz stuff. So that is primarily what I'm working with. But where I'm kind of like looking for outside of the jazz press is like finding that jazz friendly person at the outlets that are not pure jazz. So for example, like Stereo Gum, it's like there's a guy there who does a monthly jazz roundup. Like he's someone, that I would be directly pitching. I would not be pitching the editor, I'd be pitching him. Same thing for Bandcamp. It's like there's a guy there who does the jazz roundup every month. Again, you're going to want to go to him versus like, the editor, unless you have a story, because that guy is going to be the one who's going to be most inclined to cover it. So pretty much like all of the music outlets that exist these days, if they have a jazz like presence there, I'm going to be trying to pitch them and working with them. As far as jazz and classical, it's been a while since I've done that, so I can't tell you until I get the results of my first rounds of pitching. But I will tell you that, there are quite a few like classical publications out there. Some might be open to covering jazz. But I think it just comes down to, again, what I always tell people is like identify an artist whose career you admire, that you like what they've done, or that have been watching, and see who's writing about them, see who's writing about them and work backwards. I do the same thing for finding an agent or a booking agent or a manager. Like go onto their website. If like Cecile McLaurin Salvant is your inspiration, awesome. Go see, well, who's her manager? Okay, it's Tom Korkidis. All right, well, let me go to look at New Village Management. Who else do they represent? And then it's like familiarizing yourself, sorry, with the world in which you hope to enter. I say the same thing with press. It's kind of like identifying an artist who you kind of see in that crossroad and being like, okay, who is covering them? And let's go after those people. I kind of do it by the person versus like the publication at large, in most cases, if that makes sense.
Yeah, actually, this is something I've run into with consulting, and I'm curious if other people here feel this way. You're either not jazz enough, not indie enough. You went on tour with a rock band, you did this, and yet they're also producing new music. So if they go to a new music grant, then they can't have gone on a tour with a, major artist. So curious, yeah. Lydia, if you have a response to that, or if other people have felt that. Um,
I mean, it's definitely I mean, it definitely is a thing. I mean, as you know, as musicians in this day and age, it's like we have to all do millions of things. And, you know, a lot of artists are working in a lot of different genres. And yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. It's hard, and you have to again like be really intentional in the audience that you're looking to cultivate in that particular thing that you're doing. There are some, I think that I guess it's kind of like as you get grow in your artistry and as you grow in your career, eventually, you know, people become just fans of you and of what you're doing, and then you transcend genres and you transcend it, and you're just a fan of the artist, and it is whatever they do, like you're on board, you want to investigate it. I mean, there's so many artists that are multidisciplinary in that way that do so much, and you're just fans of them, you know, and you're going to kind of follow them wherever they go, but you kind of got to get there first. And I think that's the thing is as you're kind of building your career as, you know, up and coming musicians, especially, it's like you can't, in my opinion at least, it's hard to sort of start that way because it's just too eclectic and too diverse. You've got to really like focus on where you want to cultivate your audience, and then, you know, over time your audience will sort of, I don't know, cultivate itself to be like where it wants to go. You know, it's hard to explain it, but it's this symbiotic sort of relationship, I think, and you just sort of have to be really intentional in like who you're going for, like when you're doing specific projects, and also understanding that those two worlds like may not converge. You know, I mean, my husband is a jazz and drummer who also played with the Mars Volta. Like, you know, it's like when I like, you know, if anyone knows the Mars Volta, it's like when I pitched the Mars Volta, like when I pitched him for his jazz record, like no one cares that he played with the Mars Volta. You know what I mean? It's like it's a completely different, desperate world. Nobody is putting those together, except some might. And so, you know, you have to do your research and be like, well, maybe this guy's a secret prog guy. Like, let me see like what else, you know, and then you can really hit them with that if that is true. But you've got to really do your research and really get to know the person you're pitching to. That's just an example, you know, I like to use because like such a disparate worlds, like free like avant-garde jazz record versus like playing like, you know, prog rock with this like, you know, group. So you got to like figure out like what you're doing when you're doing that. I'm sorry, my dog is having a little thing. If you hear that, he's fine, but that's what that is. If you hear anything in the background, sorry. Anyway, go on.
Thanks for saying that. You know, that's
Yeah.
a question that we get from members a lot is about
Uh,
grant funding and how to, you know, tell your story there. Susan, you're always happy to chime in about that. I'm sure we'll get more questions about it. And actually, I think this kind of goes into the next question from Cornelius, that talking about the trend of story over substance. And he's asking, have you found this is a game that have you found easy to play, or do you often have to sacrifice innovative artistry to the altar of celebrity and story sort of thing? Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I get the
yeah,
question.
yeah.
No, I get the question. Uh, yeah. Yes. This is a very delicate balance. It's a very delicate balance. This is the thing. We all need coverage. I I really don't care how we get it. I mean, I do care, but it's like I want this product. I want coverage. I want my artist to be covered. So I'm gonna meet wherever whoever I'm trying to pitch, like I'm gonna meet them where they're at. And if they are looking for an easy clickbait story of something that's like a feel-good thing or something that's really quick and it links into the story well with what it is that I happen to be working, I'm gonna pitch it. I think it's kind of like understanding the audience, understanding who you're pitching and what you're going to get out of them. So, for example, it's like if I have a really complex, like a deep project that's got a lot of layers, um, I I understand that like if I'm going to pitch that to let's say that I'm going to pitch that to my person at the Huffington Post, okay, who I know that she's got a very specific narrative that she's trying to fill. Um, she's working for the Voices vertical, so it's kind of, you know, a highlight of underrepresented, you know, voices. So a lot of, you know, like a lot of basically non-white pretty much. So if that's the case, it's like I have to now look at my project and be like, okay, how can I distill this down to the most, you know, I'm covering what she wants, which is she wants to have like, you know, representation. Okay. How am I going to make this work for like an audience that absolutely understands nothing about jazz? Ji Lee the composer Ji Lee. I work with her. We got her in the Huffington Post. My thing with leading with her was like, this is a story about ancestry. This is a story about, how her grandmother, passed on these traditions, and whether it's, negative, positive, whatever, and how that is like living through Jihei, and she's putting it out through her music. The writer literally knows nothing about jazz at all. So I had to really, really, really like distill it down for her in a way that it'll make sense for her to be able then to like write this in a way that non-musicians and like non-artists will understand. So you have to do this all the time. For me, luckily in our field, I do think that most journalists do kind of want to still get to the story, and like there is an appetite for that. So we don't have to do it that much. But yeah, if I have a project that I think has like potential to reach into like a mainstream audience, but I have to like kind of dumb it down, I am going to do that. But my whole thing though was doing it in a way that is still true to the artistry, and true to the central message, and true to what the artist's intentions are. That's why when like I'm writing the press release, for example, I spend a lot of time really getting into like the nitty gritty of like what inspired this, where are we coming from contextually, so that when it is time for me to like dumb this down a little bit, I'm able to do it honestly, and do it, I guess, like kind of intelligently, so that like we're pulling on the right things that we want to, but we're still making it like palpable. So yeah, it's definitely a bit of a challenge. And I'll say like that Ted Nash, Glenn Close thing, sometimes what happens is like we'll pitch it a certain way, and then CNN, all they're going to do is run the interview with Glenn. I mean, that's exactly what happened. It's like we did the interview with Ted and with Glenn, but when the time comes down to it, like who are they going to talk to? They're going to talk to Glenn. How much time did they spend actually running like the part about her project? A little, but they mostly talked about like what her next, movie is going to be. But you know what? It's fine. And Ted was like, it's fine. Who cares? Like, we're on TV. Like, it doesn't matter. You got to look at it for what it is. And you just got to like have open eyes and understand that if CNN runs this, they're probably going to focus on Glenn Close's like upcoming movie. Like, we all know that, right? And it's like, yeah, we know that, but let's at least do it anyway. But if you expect them to get into like, tell me about, like the, your the this particular section of the music and what was going into that, like we know that that's not going to happen. So you just have to like, yeah, know your audience all the way around.
It's always about knowing your audience, indeed. Honestly, in business, and what I do, it's 100% of the time. This is a great question from Addison. She was asking some of the ways that you and your artists define a successful album release. Yeah, I think that's the general question.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to quantify. And, to some people's like their success is another artist's failure. Where like some artists, they get like, 5 reviews and they couldn't be happier, and it's like the greatest day of their life, and they're just so glad to get nice representation like that. And then for others, like it's a complete disaster. Like, oh my God, how could I only get 5 reviews? Like, what the hell is that? And it's like it is hard. For me, it's like, how do you quantify success? I think for me, the way that I quantify it personally is like, I feel like I know the industry enough now, and I know the market enough, and I know what's out there and what's possible to get. And I know what those that get a certain level of coverage, what ingredients they have to make that happen. So I feel personally like every project kind of hits its threshold, I guess, where if I can like look at a project objectively, and like 6 months after maybe it's come out, or even more than that, if it takes a long time, maybe a year after it's come out, and be like, okay, I think that we've gotten everything I could get for this. It's a bummer we didn't get this. We could have if we did XYZ, but we didn't have XYZ, so we didn't get it. And it's like, that sucks. But like, we got everything we're going to get. If I feel that we have tapped every avenue, to me, yeah, I feel like it's a successful project. The thing about publicity is that it is a long process. It is not something that happens overnight. It is many, many, many years of kind of building. Even artists that, pop off overnight, like Lakeisha, like Samara, like these artists did not pop off overnight. They've taken a lot, there's been a lot of stuff that's been going on behind the scenes for those to happen. Lakeisha, particularly, it's like, I started working with her like 5 years ago, and we really worked very intentionally to get to where we are today. She knew this was not going to happen in an album, but, we had kind of a plan, and it has kind of happened over the course of 3 albums. With some artists, it's going to take much longer than that. Some artists, they pop off in their 60s, some pop off in their 20s. So, sorry about that. So it kind of just depends on everybody's thing is different. So for me, I just want to be able to kind of like look back on the project and be like, did I turn every stone for this and get a reply? If the answer is yes, then I feel like it's been successful. For others, it will not be successful unless they get on the cover of Downbeat. And unfortunately, there is nothing I can do for you. You guys are lost. Not you guys. Those are lost. Like those people are lost in the woods. There's nothing I can do. Like if your only matter of success is being on the cover of magazine, then I can't help you with that. Like that's something that is like, that's some other stuff because that's not everything. So it definitely can get, it can get in there where things can get at the end of the campaign where you're like, well, we didn't get this, we got that. It's like, yeah, but the good thing is like for me, it's the awareness. We want there to be interest in you forever in your career. So it's really a matter of like, if Downbeat doesn't cover you now, well, they do know who you are though, because they did check it out. They did listen. Maybe they decided to pass. But that means that I can come back the next time and be like, hey, remember that one that you passed on? Well, I have this project, which is a little different. Like, what do you think about it? And that's how a lot of these things happen. They build. So I think it's just, it's kind of like a long-term thing. And then some projects just don't do well and they're just not good. And in the sense that like the campaigns are just not good, where you just did not get stuff and it was just too much of a challenge. And I will definitely, like, I'm always very honest with my artists and I'll be like, listen, last project, it was hard for me. I don't think I'm the best person. Here's who I'd recommend that you work with. And I always do that because we don't want to have like, I don't want unhappy clients. We want people to be happy. So I'm always like recommending to other people if I don't feel that I'm the right person for it. I think honesty and transparency is just really kind of like the guiding principle for a lot of this.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Louie.
Yeah, Madison.
Awesome. So we are almost at 1 o'clock. So we try to get in. We have a bunch of questions here. So we'll try to get through as many as we can. So maybe this is rapid fire times.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a comment about do you and other publicists generally focus on the US or do you pitch to European press such as The Wire?
Good question. So I particularly do US, UK, and Canada. So yes, I work with The Wire, I work with Jazzwise, I work with Financial Times, all of that. I actually work a lot in the UK. I have a really kind of like robust situation over there, which is great. I used to even have an assistant who lived over there. So that's where I'm kind of working. We end up though getting like a lot of love from jazz publications all over the place, no matter where they are. So if anyone writes about jazz, chances are they're on my list. I was just in Poland last week at a conference, where I was like, with a bunch of publications from all over the world. I'm about to go to Germany for Jazz Ahead. So I'm very like in the international community, but because of the language I speak, which is English, and my husband speaks Spanish. So I do say when we have like Latin projects, we can do a Spanish speaking thing for Latin America. But really, though, it's US, Canada, and United Kingdom for me because that's the languages I speak. And that's where I feel comfortable saying that we can work those. But what I would say internationally is get a publicist per territory, get someone in France, get someone in Germany, get someone, who can do in Japan, whatever, who can do stuff in the languages that you're working with, because without the language, it's really hard to do that.
Great. So Dylan asked a good question, just talking about the general industry and addressing how to engage younger audiences. He mentioned, when you play for rooms of the 70 plus, which everybody's familiar with. So would love your commentary on that.
Yeah. This is a whole other topic, which is like, can be a whole other discussion about how to get to the like younger audiences. it's honestly it's too big of an answer to really attack here. But what I will tell you is, again, it's meeting people where they're at. When I was at this conference in Poland, this was like a huge discussion. It's like, how do you reach the audiences? If you want to reach a younger audience, you have to go to where the audience is, and they are on TikTok, and they're on Instagram, and they're on social media, and that's where they are. Yeah, and there's all, again, there's way too much for me to really get into this deeply here, but the bottom line is, like, yeah, you got to meet them where they are. And you have to potentially um collaborate with or try to bring in artists that are already hitting that. So, like, let's say, like, if you really want to do something, like with, I have no idea. Like, let me just say, like, let's say you have like an interest in video game music. I don't know. It would behoove you to know Charlie Rosen, who runs the 8-Bit Big Band, who has like hundreds of musicians that have, from New York City that have played in this band over the years, to potentially like hook up with him to do maybe a collaboration on one of his videos that gets like, thousands and thousands and thousands of views in like one day. It's like things like that. Again, a much larger topic, but I would say, again, it's meeting the folks that you want to, who you want to get, meet them where they already are. Don't expect, like, 20-year-olds to be reading Downbeat and then like come to your concert, because like they just like won't do that. But that should be a whole other topic, which we certainly could do at some point, because that is a whole discussion. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
There was a question. Do you feel like it's from Adriana here at CMA? Do you feel like it's more difficult to start with a different genre focus and expand into a jazz audience?
Not necessarily. It all depends. Every project is different. I think that jazz people, we are tough. We are tough critics. We are the hardest. um, let me put it this way. I mean, look, if you're a great jazz musician and you can play and you're doing good work, the jazz press will notice and they will be cool. But if you aren't, and you're just kind of going into it because you want to hit that audience because you think it's beneficial to you, then, yeah, I mean, it comes down to like, can you play or not? I mean, does it sound good or not? I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think jazz is hard to kind of fake, I think it's like one of those things, like, you've got to be like really in it. And people will know if you're not. So, do you start with another genre and go there? I mean, I guess it just kind of depends on what your truth is, like what you want to do. If you find yourself in a genre and then you are gravitating toward jazz, absolutely, like, by all means, for sure. But if you're starting in like, one kind of thing and you're like, well, I kind of think this is like jazz-y, maybe I should like go into that more, let me like see how that works. Sure, absolutely do that. Just be aware that, people will be able to, they might know that, they might be able to tell that before you get to it, like, authentically. I guess it's kind of again, it's a hard thing to answer because everyone's journey is very different, and some people, what works for some will work for others, and vice versa. Others can have like full careers in pop, like Jihye Lee, again, like in Korea. South Korea was a massive, like, in pop music. She had a whole career in pop music, came here, studied at MSM, started this big band, and is now, doing this really, completely different, couldn't be any more different. And they're just like two completely different worlds. Like, they just have nothing to do with each other. And we kind of started over with the jazz stuff. And it was great. It's been great for her. It's been amazingly successful for her, So it just really depends on the situation, and it's very case by case, if that kind of answers it. I don't know.
Great. We have two questions that are kind of similar. So your recommendations about the best way to maintain momentum of publicity between releases and projects. And this kind of goes into what we were talking about earlier about the campaigns and turning that into work opportunities was the next question. So I feel like they're a little similar.
Yeah. So as far as maintaining momentum between releases, yeah, I mean, I would say that I think there's a lot of pressure to produce right now. The nature of like the Spotify world that we're in is like, you should be producing new music like, every month there's some crazy insane thing, and like feed the algorithm and feed the machine. That is a different, like, I think it's important to distinct the differences. Like, that is a distinct different approach than the approach that we, and I say we as like artists, like, that have kind of been taught to do, where it's like you put a lot of time and effort and love into like a particular project that you're really working on, and it might take you a year, 2 years, 3 years. I had someone who just told me they've been working on a project for 10 years, yesterday, that she's doing. It's like that's the antithesis of what we're actually being asked to do now. So it's very hard. I think that we have to keep in mind, again, what's the intention? What is the audience? If it is to feed the beast, I don't see any problem with releasing a bunch of singles, like a single every couple months, just to be, on the DSPs, just to kind of like have the chance of being on those playlists. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that there's any issue with like, releasing EPs or releasing stuff on your own if you just kind of want to get music out there, but just being aware that like there is a cycle in the press, and, the press cannot continue to cover you forever unless like you're, like Chick Corea, in which case, sure, but that's very unusual. So you have to remember that it's like, just because like if they gave you a big press blast with your album, in 2024, if you come back with another gigantic album in 25 and you're expecting the same thing, you're probably going to be disappointed because there's just not enough to go around like that. You kind of have to space it out. So I think it comes down to like figuring out how you want to do this. Have your album come out, let's say in 2023, your album that's what everything is about. You're all about the album. You're getting reviews probably, in, maybe 6 months, 8 months after the album has dropped. You're sharing that stuff on social media. You can always kind of like call back on old reviews and be like, oh, I just wanted to like, bring back this thing we did, or here's a video that we did. You just kind of can juice the content out of that as long as you can. And then maybe then in 2024, it's like, okay, I'm going to be a sideman and be on so-and-so's records, and my name is still going to be out there because I'm attached to these other projects. And yeah, I'll release a couple singles, or I'll like drop a video, or I'll do something like that. And then it's like, okay, 2025, it's been 2 years. I'm now going to release my next album. And then, before you know it, you realize, okay, there has been a break, but I haven't been quiet. I've been doing other stuff. And just because like the attention is not on you solely for the whole time doesn't mean that you're like falling out of favor with the press. It doesn't mean they forgot about you. That's not really the way it works. Like, you're cool. You just kind of keep steadily producing stuff, and people will know if you've hired a publicist to keep people aware of that. But in between then, yeah, I mean, if you want to feed the machine, absolutely do it. But if you don't want to feed the machine, don't, because it's not everybody feels that they want to do that. And I respect it highly.
Yeah. Next from Monica, who I want to shout out, who's a very engaged CMA member and also volunteers, and she's just a rock star, and really appreciate her artistry and also her membership. So thank you. She was asking, do you have advice for independent artists who are telling their own stories? And when do you need somebody to write that for you?
Well, I think it's to define the question. So first of all, if it's telling, like the actual telling of the story, like actually putting pen to paper and telling that story, I think that you should always hire someone outside to do it. I think you should always hire a writer to do it for you, because you are not objective enough to do it. You are objective. I'm sorry. You have obviously you have like what you want to say, and your artistry better than anyone else. And like, that is amazing. Yes, we need that. But when it comes down to telling the story objectively in a way that is, going to be used for a pitch or maybe a press release or something like that, it's good to have an objective voice or a writer who can really pull it together. So I think that no matter what, it is a good idea to hire a writer to tell your story, whether it's do your bio, your artist bio, your album bio, or your press release, if you can't hire a publicist. I think that's really important. And again, as far as identifying those writers, it's asking around, asking your friends, asking your colleagues, but also seeing what they're writing. Do you like their writing style? And, is this somebody who you think can get to the crux of your story? So I think you should always have someone do it to help you do it. And then it comes down to when to hire a publicist or not. If you have stuff to publicize, then it's time to hire a publicist. If you have a tour, or you have a label that is investing in you, if you have a lot of exciting stuff on the horizon that's newsworthy, then yeah, it probably makes sense to talk to a publicist. But it comes down to what you want to see. If your goal, again, is to get covered in the publications that we're working with in traditional media, great. If your goal is to get radio play, and that's the most important thing, and you have a limited budget, maybe it's better to just hire a radio promoter and you can do the PR yourself. Or maybe you want to be on playlists and that's the priority. So therefore, maybe in that case, it makes more sense to just invest in digital marketing and to be focused on that. It's not always that the publicity is the only thing. There are sometimes other things that you can do before you get to a PR person. It just comes down to like what you want to see, and what your goals are.
That's so helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome. And saving a fun one for last, from John, is the jazz industry currently more about working in New York or through New York? And I also just want to give a shout out. I live in Atlanta. We are desperate for more artists to come down here. We're hungry. So please consider it.
Yeah, is it more about working in New York or through Europe? I don't know. I don't know how to answer. I mean, New York is like I've lived in New York since 2014. I grew up in Pennsylvania, like very close to New York. Like so I've spent a lot of time. I've seen New York go through many stages, through my father playing here over the years and stuff. I mean, it has changed so much. I do have to say, I mean, I do think that in the end, like, yes, I mean, New York is like the center in some ways. In some ways, it's not of everything. Yes, a lot of writers live here. Yes, a lot of media are here. And yes, it is important to have a presence here, but you also don't have to. And I've had plenty of artists that have never even been to New York City that have done fine in their PR campaigns. I have a lot of artists in Chicago. I have a lot of artists in LA. I have tons of artists in Canada. I mean, I have people everywhere. I have tons in London. I mean, and they have nothing to do with New York and they do fine. But I think that there's definitely, like that feeling that New York is the center of it all. And it's a center, but there are other centers too. But yes, I think that coming through New York, though, at some point is helpful if you can, because it is nice to be able to say, hey, we have this album and they are doing a release show at the Jazz Gallery, or like they are going to be at Smalls. Even something like that, it just shows activity, and it gives an opportunity for people to check out the artist if they want to, if they live here.
Great.
Thank
Thank you so much, Lydia. I think oh, yeah, John. It's a fun question. Well, we're going to wrap up now. Lydia, do you have any last comments for the group?
No, I think that no, and I see this question here, which is a really good question. And I will just say, it is like, yes, all of this is like everything is fluid. Literally all of it is, because everything is subjective, because it all comes down to like someone's mood when you're pitching somebody and how they feel like that day that you're doing it. And if that guy had a fight with his partner that morning and you're pitching a story about something and he's in a bad mood, he's going to say no. It's like, so that's the thing. So when I say that, it's like, when we're talking about like, well, like what are the genre, like what are the genre boundaries and where are the borders, it is fluid. And that is why when you hire a publicist, what you are hiring them for, a lot of it is like their knowledge and expertise in the people that we're going after. So in the case like Lakeisha, yes, it is random. And I will tell you, Lakeisha's career before she started working with me was very multi-genre. It was a lot more like funk and kind of like, Soul Squad, or like a different thing. She came to me with her first like jazz project, which was her Coltrane tribute album, Pursuance. And with that, I had a very clear directive. And I wasn't really even familiar with her before that. So for me, I only knew her as a jazz artist, and I was only pushing her as a jazz artist. I have never pulled the multi-genre card with Lakeisha. I have pulled it with the Baylor Project, because Jean Baylor was with Jeanne, and they're an R&B supergroup. So it's like, I have pulled it there, and in some cases it's made a difference, and in other cases it has actually been detrimental, because they just are not into that. So it really comes down to just knowing the audience, and hiring a publicist or whoever, a radio promoter, your agent, whatever, whoever it is that you're bringing into your team. What you're bringing them on for is for them to lend those expertise, to be like, okay, this will be an asset with this person, but we definitely don't want to mention it to this person. And kind of understanding how to shape that narrative, because there is no like book on, okay, like this is what it is, and these are the boundaries, because they're not. And yes, in some cases the artist overshadows absolutely everything else. Like Andre 3000 is out here, doing like what he's doing, and people are like, it's a jazz record. You're like, this is not at all. But he is such a personality that it really doesn't matter, and they're going to cover him anyway. And that's kind of like, That's the thing. It is frustrating because it's hard to really put a definition on it, and I get that. But the whole point, I guess, when you're hiring a professional is to trust them to use their expertise to help sort of suss that out. But I completely understand that it is frustrating and it can be just like you're like kind of in the dark sometimes as an artist, like what the hell is anything? And I get that because I feel that way too.
So great. Thank you so much, Lydia. Really, this has been a great meeting and just so wonderful to hear from you. So I did want to mention, well, Susan, if you have something to say, go ahead.
No, I just want to say thank you again. I mean, this is, you're just, an encyclopedia of so much knowledge. And it's just been great. And like I said, verve, to quote the label, you've got verve. And your excitement for the music is really what comes through so clearly. We need more like you. Thank you so much,
Thank
Lydia.
you. I'm always happy to share. I do a lot of these like panels and teaching things like this because I really do feel that like, the more knowledge that everyone has about how things work, because it is very like confusing and kind of like it's hard to sort of break in. So yeah, I'm always happy to like share any information and whatever anyone wants to know, ask me anything.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So our next jazz industry group meetup is April 22nd. So that registration information will be coming out soon. Really excited to say that our first meeting of the Composers Circle on April 8th is with Sophia Ray. We're so excited. Sophia is so amazing. Next week, we have Donna Walker-Kuhn, and I'll put these in the chat as well. Donna Walker-Kuhn of Walker International Communications Group. She's talking about economic impact and proving your case. This is really important when it comes to looking at your local government, just government things in general. And also for some funders, it's a really great case to make about the economic impact that you're having. And then we also have our women's leadership group on April 10th. It's a great crew, so just want to make sure that people come out to that. So I'm going to put that in the chat. And please make sure we send out these members only emails that list all of the things coming up, but also in Accent, you'll see them there as well. If you log into your account, you'll immediately be taken to our members corner page, which lists everything that we have coming up. We're so excited to engage with you. Please do get in touch. We're here to be a resource connector and a partner with you. So I also want to say that our jazz grants and any questions about that can be directed to either Susan or the grants at chambermusicamerica.org. Thank you again so much for coming. I will follow up with a survey and also a recording, which includes the chat information as well. And yeah, we just ask that we will know if you share it, and so don't share it. Thank you. And again, just want to say thank you. Thank you for being such engaged members and for being here today. We're so grateful.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.